This is Smiles TV. Welcome to Smiles Television Talk Show. I'm Stephanie Miles, and I am at the Better Family Life in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we're having a broadcast regarding bridging the gap. There are many gaps to bridge, and the Better Family Life organization is one who is magnificent in doing just that. We'll be talking with James Clark, Vice President of Community Outreach. Remember, Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Thank you for staying with us on Smiles TV Talk Show. I'm talking with James Clark. Most of you know him, but you're going to get to know him a little bit better today. James Clark, the Community Outreach Vice President from Better Family Life, an organization that's doing great things in the St. Louis, East St. Louis area. James, thank you for coming to Smiles.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, for having me. Right. Well, coming over here to Better Family Life. So you're right. You know what? I've never been on this floor. You have a magnificent floor here. The mural is beautiful.
Yeah, we're very proud of the Better Family Life Cultural Education and Business Center. What it's doing to revitalize not just this immediate neighborhood, but the message that is sending of the possible of revitalization in some of our more challenged neighborhoods. Too often, neighborhoods turn to blight because there's no vision. Our founder and CEO, Malik Ahmed, understood the importance of bringing a facility of this caliber into the neighborhoods where people can have access and people can receive the resources needed to stabilize their families and thereby stabilizing the entire neighborhood.
Wow, and I'm speaking of the resources and services. Give our audience a little background on some. I know you have basically 5 major departments.
We are very active in several areas. All of our divisions work to empower individuals and thereby empowering families. Our youth and clinical department is headed by Mrs. Miranda Jones. They have stellar programming for young people, everything from arts to entertainment to evidence-based programs dealing with teen pregnancy prevention and leadership training in St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and also the East St. Louis School District. Our workforce division is headed by Mr. Gerald Grimes, where they prepare people for employment. Too often, it is overstated that people are ready for work. The fact of the matter is, too many people don't have the soft skills necessary to get and then maintain a job. So Mr. Grimes and his staff work to give people the soft skills needed to compete in today's workforce. Then we have our cultural arts division headed by Mrs. Deborah Ahmed, really working to bring culture back into our community. We cannot understate the importance of reconnecting our community with our African heritage. When you look at what's going wrong, is really steeped in the fact that we don't have a clue of who we are and what great foundation we come from. So
I was talking to somebody recently, and they were saying pretty much the exact same thing, that most individuals can go back to their roots and they know their history, but we have trouble identifying who we are and maintaining some of those things that are from our culture.
We have a very false and a very destructive culture where you know, you can look at other ethnic groups and they can draw on culture to set an expectation. Sadly to say, we've been detached from our culture, so our culture is steeped in surface and very, very shallow things. We want designer clothes. We want to go out and party.
Right.
We want to consume marijuana. We want to consume alcohol. And so Better Family Life believe that we've got to begin to push an Afrocentric culture and reconnect each individual. African American men have got to understand that our culture requires for us to be responsible to ourselves, our family, and to our community. African American women have to reconnect and realign with a culture that will foster better mothers, better helpmeets.
Right.
And so at Better Family Life, we, through our cultural arts, blend art with culture, with health, nutrition, giving that holistic African perspective to us in America so that we can begin to heal. There's a lot of healing that will occur as we reconnect with our culture.
We have a rich culture, and it takes an organization like Better Family Life to help bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And that's something that you guys are doing over here. How did you personally get involved with Better Family Life?
I returned to St. Louis in 1989 after being away at school and doing a stint in the military.
Okay.
And I was looking for more than what I left. I came back to St. Louis, fell back in with my old friends, doing the same things that we had always done, and was looking for something more. Just knew that there was more to life than what I was doing with my old neighborhood friends. So a friend of mine asked me, had I ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I said no. Then one day I was laying on my mother's floor, and I looked up and I saw the book, and I began to read it.
Okay.
And it transformed the way that I looked at the world. Reading the autobiography of Malcolm X was a very strong pivotal point in my life. So I began to look for entities that could feed that. And I started attending the Better Family Life meetings at the University City Library, and it quenched that thirst. Okay. And then at that time in the early 90s, there was a surge in Afrocentric narrative. And the whole Black Power movement re-emerged. People were wearing the Malcolm X hats at Public Enemy. And so St. Louis went through a strong phase. What attracted me to Better Family Life was they went beyond the narrative. We went beyond talking about it. We actually practiced Better Family Life with each other. So I just saw that dimension that I didn't see in any other organization. So I joined in 1989, and I've been a member ever since.
So since 1989 to this year, 2017, what major differences have you seen in our community, and how is Better Family Life impacting that?
Well, what Better Family Life believes is that we have got to begin to go to the bottom. That too often the dive is not deep enough. When you look at social service agencies, when you look at governmental agencies, there's a lot of surface activity. But Better Family Life, we believe that we've got to take a much deeper dive. We've got to be present in our more challenged neighborhoods, not for a day, but we've got to set up, and we've got to be able to establish a beachhead at what we call ground zero. The purpose of today is to drive home the message to the African American community that we can no longer look past this crisis. That as African Americans, it's time for us to take ownership of the violence that we perpetrate on each other, and take ownership of the killing that we do to each other.
This is my son over here with his kids. This is my brother. This is my nephew. This other one is my nephew. And they all was killed on the streets.
I lost my son 2 years ago, Carl Frederick Tabb, and I'm here in honor of him.
We've played past it for too long. We've ignored it for too long. We cannot let another generation of African American youth grow up in a community where killing is accepted and expected. So it's a new day, and we're going to keep hammering this. We are going to continue to push the narrative that African Americans have got to start treating African Americans better.
My brother Justin Houston and his friend Maureen Lee were murdered October 14, 2014.
My nephew got murdered on our front porch, his mother's front porch. He got killed January 2015.
No one can come into the African American community and stop the pain. African Americans, we must stop the pain. We transfer too much pain to each other, and we have to address it. And now is a start. It is a statement, and it is a reality that African Americans, we can no longer avoid. We have to own the fact that we kill each other.
That's right. And you know what? Killing is not just happening in Missouri, it's in Illinois, it's all over.
Yeah.
And talking about bridging the gap, I want to thank, first of all, Gerald Quincy Jones, who actually helped us arrange this. And he's from the East Side, but he works over here with you.
Yeah.
And so that's just another sign of how we are bridging the gap. Now, just so our audience will know, James has said that periodically, when we do segments on bridging the gap, he'll be our Missouri contact person. And we'll also have James Ingram, who's a columnist from the St. Louis American newspaper.
Yeah.
So the two together will be doing some things. So you're going to have some great shows that's coming up. If people want to make contact with you, Better Family Life, or with the We Must Stop Killing Each Other, what's the best way to make contact?
They can give us a call at 314-381-8200, 314-381-8200.
Okay, very good. And I know this has been quick, but is there anything that we missed that you want to make sure?
Well, really, just want to make 2 points.
Okay.
One, we've got to bridge that gap. That when you look at any other major city, a body of water does not separate the connection as much as that Mississippi River does from East St. Louis to St. Louis. And it is incumbent upon us as African Americans to begin to network with our brothers and sisters on the East Side so that we can come up with, we have common issues.
That's right.
And we've got to begin to look at it and say, how can we work together? There should be no communication breakdown. When you look at Louisiana, Lake Pontchartrain is what, about an hour's drive?
Yeah, oh wow, that's right, that's right.
But the narrative is the same. The people have the same thoughts, the same ideas. There's a synergy. Our river is about a 2-minute drive.
Right.
And so it is incumbent upon us to understand that we have one destiny as the bi-state. Then the other thing that we've got to accept is that we have a responsibility now. We cannot look past the dysfunction in our neighborhoods. We cannot continue to play past the fact that our people are dying every day. There's nothing more important than that. And you know, we are all Christians. And our leader said that my Father's work is not in the temple.
That's right.
My Father's work is in the community. And so now his followers have got to do what he commanded us to do.
James Clark, thank you so very much.
you
God
for
bless
having
you.
me.
God
Thank
keep
you.
you. And we'll be right back. Hold on before you jump off here so I can
I
go to
look
a break.
forward to it.
Okay, stay tuned for more Smiles. We'll be right back. And guess what? We have another segment that is really great. It's called What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des. That's Dr. Desarie Holmes. She's going to be dealing with the whole person, mental health issues. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Thank you, James, for being on here. I want you to remember to thank James, too, from Better Family Life. And welcome back to Smiles TV. We are in the process of bridging many gaps on a monthly basis. You'll have the opportunity to hear from our own mental health expert, Dr. Desarie Holmes. Dr. Holmes is going to start a segment called What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des. Dr. Desarie Holmes. Welcome, Dr. Holmes.
Yay,
welcome back, actually. Now, you're one who came back.
Yes,
and you're back to stay.
I'm back to stay. I came back. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Holmes, I want to thank you again. And our audience has no idea what they're in store for. And I want you to tell them what's on your mind and how did you come up with that concept of what's on your mind with Dr. Des?
Well, so what's on your mind came about because I've been in this year 20 years in mental health. And I started first as a sexual assault advocate, worked my way up into working in homes, doing home visits, and then working with children and adolescents, with families, infant mental health, the entire lifespan. And I've worked in different cities across the country. I've worked in the Metro East area in Illinois, St. Louis. I've worked in New Jersey, in Newark, New Jersey, in Rochester, New York. And in all of those cities, there's a commonality that's across the board. And so one of the main things that you see consistently, stigma. The stigma of mental illness is huge, it's big. And that stigma is what keeps a lot of people from seeking help. It blocks people from coming forward. We have families that are fearful that if I get my child assessed or evaluated, that somehow that's going to put this label on them, or you're going to automatically put my child on medication. I don't want my child on medication. I don't want my kid to be, to be doped up. And so you have all of these things. And so the idea of what's on your mind with Dr. Des is to really help to demystify treatment.
Okay.
It is to bring accurate information. It is to educate people. And it's to give people a sense that, you know what, is it any different that if you had diabetes,
that's right,
heart disease, cancer, you go see a doctor, you get the necessary and proper treatment. There's a treatment team that you work with. They provide the necessary diagnosis, and then they treat. Same thing with mental health.
What are the core concepts of what's on your mind? And you just talked about some of your background and all of that, but your core concepts, and because you gave me a lot of information. I already know what they are, but I'm trying to get that out of you. What are your core concepts?
So the core concepts for what's on your mind, it's very fluid. And so it's ever evolving, because when you look at research, when you look at data, the research is ever evolving, the data is ever evolving. So want to be as current as possible as I can possibly bring information. But the core concepts really stem on looking at from your psychological, social, emotional, as well as from your biblical and spiritual. And so want to focus on those concepts. For instance, from a spiritual and biblical perspective, out of 3 John, beloved above all, I wish you to be in good health. Right. For you to prosper as your soul prospers, and so when we look at those things, let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus. So again, we're talking about the mind and how powerful that is, and your thoughts, how well your thought process. It's a very, very famous psychiatrist, Dr. Aaron Beck, and he's really responsible for really developing that whole entire theory on thought processing. And that whole entire cognitive model. And cognition is just a fancy word for your thought process, how you think. And so when we really understand from a psychological perspective that our thoughts are so powerful and that they impact us negatively, positively, whether your thoughts are irrational, whether they're rational, exaggerated or distorted, however your perception, that is your reality.
Wow, that is such a good point, and we're going to have to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about that. You're watching Smiles TV, Bridging the Gap with Smiles, and we have a new segment called What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Welcome back to Smiles, Bridging the Gap with Smiles, and What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des. Dr. Des, thank you for being with us, and we're talking about mental health. We're talking about the culture of mental health. You know, when James was on here, we talked a lot about, not a lot, but we did discuss some of the murders that's going on and the climate in Illinois, Missouri, and all over the country. What does that do to just everyday people? Even if we're not involved in it personally, what impact may that have?
One of the largest impacts that I think a lot of times people underestimate is the whole issue of trauma. People being traumatized by events. And you don't necessarily have to witness it per se yourself. You can hear about a situation. Someone can retell their story and it can have a traumatic effect upon you. You can see it on the news. And think about it, nowadays on the news, you have 24-hour access. So whatever is going on, it's replaying and replaying and replaying and replaying. Currently, researchers are beginning to really understand more about the traumatic effects upon individuals and their mental health well-being, as well as the effects that it has upon a person physiologically. I'm really, really excited and happy to know that more and more physicians are beginning to connect the linkages. So when you talk about bridging the gap, so another gap that's being bridged is where physicians are really starting to take a look at people's mental health and their mental well-being. And so, because here's the thing, physicians do a fabulous job with controlling things like hypertension.
Right.
And their diabetes. Yet we know in our emergency rooms that we're still seeing people that are showing up in our ERs, in our emergency departments, and they're still dysregulated. So we have to take another step and dig deeper. So we have to drill down and say, so what's going on? And one of the things that we know that in a lot of our primary care physician offices, taking a look at a person's mental health. And so historically, primary care physicians have backed off from that, but more and more and more are coming on board. There's some great, exciting things that they're doing with that.
And just mentioning diabetes and high blood pressure and things of that nature, we tend to think that that's normal, okay, we can go get treated for that. But when it comes to mental illness, like you said, there's just such a stigma. Can anything be done to break that up, and how can you do that through this broadcast, What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des?
So one of the things with What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des that I'm so excited, I'm just really excited because I want to be able to, first of all, provide education. So I want to be able to educate the African American community. I want people to understand their help-seeking behaviors, how to ask questions, how to, look up things and do some research when you're in your doctor's offices, how to understand what are some of the, maybe some signs and symptoms. And so these are all elements that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be looking at what are some of the different illnesses, bringing on other guests who are experts within their fields. We're going to be looking at from the neuroscience, what the research, what the data says, from the public health advocacy. And so there's so many different elements that goes along into this. And so that's what I'm so excited about, because hopefully what this segment will do is give a well-rounded wealth of information, not just one particular thing, but a well-roundedness of education.
One thing that we did not talk about, the music leading in to your segment was actually created by your son?
It's created by my youngest son.
And his name, go ahead.
And my youngest son's name is Pearson Holmes, and he created that, and this is what he does, making beats and sounds. And so I went to him and I said, listen, I need something for this segment. And so of course he said, Mom, I got you. And so we listened to several different things, and I really liked this one. And I liked it because it was a little different and offbeat.
And it is. And you know what? When I first heard it, like I told you, I said, well, okay, it's a little different. But then when you listen to it, it fits.
It fits with what's on your mind. And so what's on your mind, when you think about what's on your mind, it's not just about a question. It's bigger, it's broader than a question of what's on your mind. It's more than that. It's who you are, who do you think you are, who do you want to be, who do you want to become, and how does the mind play a role in that? How does your thought process play a role in
And I'm
that.
going to tell our audience a secret, but it shouldn't be a secret because you've actually seen Dr. Des on a broadcast before. When we did the Healthy Smiles with Touche Regional Hospital, she was the individual there who dealt with the department, the clinical department at the hospital. And I told her then, I said, you know what, you need to do a little bit more and get that information out because she has a wealth of information within her to share. And like you said, you're going to be bringing others on. And going forward, give us a long range view of where you see what's on your mind with Dr. Des going.
Oh my goodness, really? You really gonna ask
Really?
me that question? So the long range is to really reach this entire region and beyond, because the scope of mental illness is big. The scope of mental health. I prefer to approach it from a standpoint of mental health, because if you're not caring for your health, then it leads into illness. And so I prefer to be as preventive. And so that message is worldwide, and so it can blow up and be as big as we want it to be.
And that's what we're going to do. We're going to blow it.
Oftentimes, again, we see things in our children, with our children, that a lot of times we might want to excuse away. And again, what I said initially when we first opened up, that we're hesitant to have that looked into a little further, to examine that, because we may be fearful or we don't want to label our children.
But what about the family that is dysfunctional, from grandmama on down to the one who's actually committing those things? How can we as a community help, or what should happen there? Because like you said, you want to watch the growth patterns, you want to see what has been happening along the way, but what if that mother or that dad is not even capable of identifying that? How can we as a community help?
And so that's a great question. That's a great question, and it's a very sensitive one, because oftentimes, again, particularly in the African American community, we have that saying, what goes on in this house stays in this house. So we don't talk about our business. We don't want people in our business. And historically, we've had other agencies coming in and maybe removing our children and different things like that, and that can be seen as very disruptive. But let's just say, for example, as a neighbor, as a friend, as a girlfriend, as a family member, and you notice that there's something that's going on. Definitely, and within love. I always say, do it within love, and do it from a place of care and concern. Don't be confrontive and confrontational and confront them, from this negative place. But do it in love and just say, hey, there are some resources that's out there and that's available, and you might want to consider taking a look at this, because I'm just seeing and noticing certain things, and I'm just concerned, and and if you would like, and always extend, if you would like, I can give you the number, or I can even call for you.
Those are good points, and we could go on and on, because this topic is one that is much needed. But I want to thank you again.
Thank you
for creating this segment called What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des. You're going to love this. And I want to thank you for joining us on Smiles Television Talk Show. Tune in every Monday. We are now on Charter Cable Channel 198, Channel 984 on the Illinois and Missouri side. We're on YouTube and Facebook. We're all over the place. So catch us on Smiles. Remember, only what you do for Christ will last. And keep smiling. You look better when you smile.
The Smiles Television Talk Show wants to showcase your business, organization, church, and activities. If you have an interest in being a guest on Smiles Television Talk Show, or if you have any show ideas, contact Stephanie Anthony Miles at smilestv777@gmail.com. You may also call 618-741-3770. Tell your friends to subscribe to the Smiles YouTube channel. Let Smiles TV increase your reach. Remember, you look better with smiles.